like Halloween scripts. There's a funny story. One time, one of our resident monks went to the mall after the Halloween, and there were some young people, and they said, "Yo, Halloween is over. What are you doing? It's still a Halloween costume." So people think, this robe is a Halloween costume. What is always good, though. So I wasn't planning to be here tonight. I was going to another event. I don't know what happened, so my ride didn't come. But I already had asked Venerable to take over today's meditation in my absence. But I'm here, but I'm expecting Venerable Atulo to give the Dhamma talk. So.
Okay, so hello everybody. Usually when I come here and Bhante isn't here, I start off by saying Bhante has big shoes to fill. But this time Bhante's actually here. So, it can't definitely, even bigger, harder to fill the shoes when somebody's in them. So. And so, as Bhante mentioned, this is a kind of Halloween, and it's a kind of time of tricks and treats. So, Bhante I asked me to come to give the talk, and I showed up here and they said, "Okay, Bhante's here, so you don't have to give the talk." And I said, "Okay." And then I saw Bhante and he said, "Okay, so maybe you'll give the talk. I'll let you know when I see you." If I look at you and say give the talk, that means, give the talk. And so being around Bhante, have learned to give talks spontaneously, which is a requirement, being around senior monks. And, in a sense, kind of, Halloween is, has this kind of element to it. Never really know what's going to happen on Halloween. Actually, I was talking with Curtis on the ride over and asking, so, what's the origin behind Halloween? And he said, well, Halloween is a kind of Celtic holiday, and it was a time when the Druids used to think that the barrier between this world and the other one was really thin. So this kind of fall equinox time. And because of that, all these kind of spirits would break through. And, breaking through these spirits would, haunt people and things like that. And so people would dress up in order to kind of fool the spirits and think that you were one of the spirits. And so today, in kind of honor of that, I guess, monks, or not monks rather, but people, little kids will dress up in costumes, and they will threaten people at the door and say, give me a treat, or I'm going to trick you. And so they come away with these kind of large bags of candy and go home and have a lot of fun eating it. But in fact, kind of in a sense, these kids threatening to trick or treat, every day, in a sense, is kind of Halloween like that. People often come to our door, and we don't necessarily know who they are, and they knock on our door, and we don't necessarily know what they want, and it could be a trick, and it could also be a treat. So, people can come and offer a really kind of amazing cable package at the door, where you're going to get free cable and unlimited internet for up to 6 months, and there's no contract, and you start to wonder, is this a trick or a treat? What's this package about right here? And so sometimes you may sign up for a package like that, and no bills come for a while, and then 6 or 7 months down the line, you realize you didn't read the fine print of this particular knock on the door. And in fact, there was a contract that activated in the 5th month, and you had to back pay for 3 months of your cable package. And so quite often, not only the people who knock on our doors, but also the thoughts that knock in our mind are similar to these kids that knock on the door at Halloween. In other words, they come with a mask. And they come with the potential to trick or to treat. So quite often, it's easy to think whatever thought comes up is just like these little cute kids. It's just wearing a mask, it's very cute, it knocks on the door, and we'll let it in. Yeah? See what happens. Yeah? Have this thought come in, and it's very adorable at first, it's very nice at first, and then following this train of thought, it suddenly changes. But the amazing thing about this is the next thought that comes knocking on the door with a mask that looks like a demon. Feel like letting it in again. Anyways, no matter how many of these kind of thoughts knock at the door. And then sometimes thoughts come knocking at the door and their costume doesn't seem particularly interesting. It doesn't seem like a particularly flashy costume. Maybe, there was a funny story. There was this parent I was talking to yesterday, and they said that if you buy costumes right after Halloween, they're cheaper. And they bought this costume for their kid the last year, and she was saying, yeah, I got it for him, and I told him just wear it for 5 minutes, but he doesn't like it. And I said, so what is the costume? Is it Iron Man? It's Spider-Man? And she said, no, it's a pizza. So that, a kid might not like to look like a pizza on Halloween, not a particularly flashy costume. Your friends won't say, oh, that's really cool, you're a pizza, what kind are you? You have olives or pepperonis. They might have a superhero costume. And yet this kid who knocks on the door is adorable, despite his non-flashy costume. This is a kid who's genuinely out for Halloween candy, and who will eat it in a good way, and who has good intentions in mind in knocking at the door. So often there's this kind of dichotomy. It's actually a pattern that occurs in samsara, a pattern that occurs outwards in the world, and that occurs inwards in our mind, which is this, that things that are flashy, things that are enticing, things that grab attention right away, these are things that are very easy to consume. A thought comes knocking on the door, it has this very flashy costume. Let's go head back in time, 10 years ago, when you were in university, or when you were first, on your first, movie with the person who would later become your spouse. Let's go back 20 years to that really happy childhood memory, and here is somebody knocking at the door saying, I've got this really great treat for you. Let me in. And so, of course, when something like that knocks on the door, the impulse is, okay, come on in. Let's see what you've got for me. Kind of let it in, and we hop into this memory, and there we are. 10 years ago, back in university. And we're having all kinds of fun, things are great, and then all of a sudden, we remember some broken relationship from university days. Or all of a sudden, some memory comes up from those days that we didn't want to think about. Oh, this person really did this mean thing to me 10 years ago, and now our world is shifted. Instead of being this thing with this nice treat, it suddenly turns and tricks us. And so we observe this kind of thing over and over again, these flashy thoughts, the ones that entice. These are the ones that pull a person's attention immediately. They're very easy to get drawn into, and actually most movies, most television shows are based on this principle. They start with a hook. a really flashy costume, a really huge explosion, a really amazing thing that leaves you wondering, what's going to happen, next after this? And then before you know it, 2 hours have gone by, and it's one succession of explosions, usually killing, often drinking. Usually the people in the movies aren't living normal lives in their marriages, and this is what draws attention in. This is what's fun to watch. This is what looks like a treat when it knocks on the door. But the amazing thing about this is that, just as Bhante was mentioning a few weeks ago, is that although these things are very flashy, they have this quality where they spike at the beginning, they hold our attention for a bit, and then all of a sudden, something goes wrong. Actually, if we watch movie after movie, people who become addicted to movie watching start to use these kind of things as a means to escape things that are happening in their life. The stimulus that comes right away distracts from whatever problem might have arisen in a person's life, and it seems so enticing. The tricky thing about these kind of stimuli is that although they can grab our attention immediately, with each successive round of stimulus, the amount that they grab our attention gets less and less and less. And the amount that we need to consume to get the same effect becomes more and more and more. In other words, this is the pattern that addictions follow. So this is one of the interesting principles in the mind, is that this idea of needing something to distract, needing something to grab onto, needing something to turn ourselves away from whatever it might be that's in our normal range of vision, this is a principle that doesn't just apply to things like drugs, things like whatever it is. Whatever stimulus is consumed for the sake of having a kind of distraction, a kind of something that will just take our minds away, these all graph in the same pattern as an addiction. They come with this really flashy costume, but each time they're around, this kind of flashy costume starts changing a bit, and suddenly we see that those horns aren't fake. But the nice thing about it, there's also this opposite process. There's also this opposite process to the whole matter. Although there's these things that come with the flashy costume, they pull our attention right away. There's also things that come with the costume, like a pizza, Like, it's not going to, okay, nice costume with the pizza. Friends won't compliment you on that, Doesn't seem like anything big at first, And these are the kind of opposite things. They're the kind of wholesome thoughts that arise. They don't grab our attention and hold it right away. In fact, we have to grab them and cultivate them. So nobody makes movies usually about people who are not killing anything, even spiders. What kind of movie would that be, eh? Kind of people drinking lemonade, not really doing anything. Nobody's going to dress in a costume like that. It's not particularly threatening. What are you? I'm somebody who's totally harmless. Showing up in my plaid shirt. Well, no candy for you. Nobody's going to make movies about people, well, not usually anyway, not stealing, not drinking, not, people being good partners in marriages. These kind of movies wouldn't be particularly interesting to watch. And these are like these kind of kids might show up at the door. Costume isn't particularly flashy, but they're good kids. Maybe a little poor, maybe their parents bought them their costume the year before, and they're a pizza. But these are good kids. They're not going to trash your house. They're not going to take your candy and throw eggs at your house later, which probably is going to happen some places tonight. They're not going to throw toilet paper in your tree. They're not going to prank call you. They're going to take the candy and go home and go to school the next day. And these are the kind of kids that we want to let into our house. These are the kind of kids that we let have candy on Halloween. And in the same way, when these opportunities for these various kind of thoughts arise, when an opportunity to think thoughts of loving kindness comes up, an opportunity to think well of people, an opportunity to avoid thinking evil of people, we feed that. We let it into our house, and we give it candy. And the interesting thing about this is that rather than this kind of stimulus, which is really big at the beginning and goes less and less and less, this works in the opposite way. It's like somebody who plants a garden has this really small seed at first. Doesn't seem like anything particularly flashy or big, but they put the seed in the ground, and they make sure the ground has good soil, it has good nutrients, and then every single day they come back to that piece of ground and they water it. They make sure that, okay, if there's any plants blocking the way, blocking the sunshine, they clear those out. And any weeds that arise, they pull them out, all to give this seed opportunity to grow. Now, the first long while people are watering this seed, nothing's happening. Water the seed for 2 weeks or a week, I don't know, I'm not a farmer. Last time I planted a seed was maybe grade 4, but I remember you could see it in this cup growing, it's kind of but whatever, after maybe 2 weeks, you might see this kind of leaf, shoot out of the ground. And then you realize, okay, something's happening here. This is a leaf. This is a good thing. But still, it's not enough to just stop at seeing the leaf. We have to evaluate, is this the leaf of the plant I want to grow? Or is it the leaf of a weed that's going to choke this plant out? Have to use our discernment to see whether it's good or not. If it's a weed, then we pull it out right away. If it's a sign that our plant's growing, then what do? We just keep doing the same thing. Keep watering the plant every day. Keep making sure there's sunshine every day. Maybe put a cage around it so that rabbits can't eat our plant. And then time comes, our plant becomes this big, and now we're a little bit more sure that what we're doing is good. And then time comes, it's this big, and now we're even more sure. And then the time comes when it starts to bear fruits. Maybe tomatoes, say. We kind of get these tomato plants, have these kind of fruits. And still, we have to guard these kind of fruits. We can't let birds or other animals come in and eat them. We won't have any harvest. And then finally, perhaps after a couple months, 2-3 months of work, each and every day this plant is grown, the tomatoes are ripe, and we can pluck them. We can have the reward for ourselves. And this is the same thing with these various types of visitors that come knocking on our door. Same thing with these various types of thoughts. If a wholesome thought comes, it doesn't seem like much, Spreading metta around. It's not something that right away will be like an explosion. I actually was talking to somebody the other day, and they sat down and they were really angry, They were kind of not, this person's really calm usually, and really kind of nice person. And they were like, I want to ask you a question about meditation. And I was like, okay, I'll try my best to answer it. And they're like, I've been reading this book, and I can't get past step like D to E. And so then, kind of investigating, seeing what these steps are. Okay, turns out step A is like sit down. Step B is like watch your breath. Step C is, okay, learn to spread the breath energy for your body. Step D is make your mindfulness continuous. Step E is you'll have a light nimitta arise. And step F is you're going to enter the light nimitta and have these amazing experiences in jhana, And so the person was, I can't get from step, whatever it was, D to E, I can't remember what letter I was saying now, like E to F, the one where you're going from just making your mindfulness continuous to having this light nimitta arise. Well, there's a whole lot to do in making our mindfulness continuous. This is like the stage where we have this kind of seed. Okay, steps to plant the plant. Go buy the plant package, open the package up, put it in the ground, and then water it for 3 months, So it can be at this step where just gradually, day by day, every day, watering the plant, pulling out the weeds, It's doing this over and over again. And so at this stage, when we're cultivating things in this way, what we have to be is not somebody who's looking for these fancy explosions, not somebody who's looking for these amazing costumes. We have to be more like one of these farmers who's looking for these shoots in the ground. Even the smallest potential. We become trained to look for that. And then when we see it, we learn to water it and make it grow. So this is the thing, just like these kids who come to our door every time, at Halloween, what's this kid's intention? Have to use our discernment. Is this kid one of these kids, who's going to be a good kid? Is he a bad kid? What's his intention? Decide which ones to let into our house. In the same way, these thoughts come knocking on our mind, Okay, is this a good thought or is it a bad thought? Is this a good perception? Is it a bad perception? Is it a perception that I should water and make grow? Or is it a weed? And which one is it? And it's not necessarily the case that we'll be able to have a teacher with us for every single thought telling us about these things. Cut this one out, weed this one, do this, do that. This is why we have to develop this faculty of discernment. This ability to see beneath the mass of the various thoughts that come knocking on our door. Then if we have these kind of wholesome qualities, we learn to water them. We learn to see, is this a thought of goodwill? Is this a thought of non-harming? Is this a thought of renunciation? Is this a thought that reduces my anger towards somebody or makes it grow? Is this a thought that reduces my greed towards something or makes it grow? Is this a thought that's a useless worry about the future, or is it concerned with growing in wholesome qualities now in the present? And when we have these kind of thoughts, we learn to water them. We learn to become sensitive to the happiness that comes from goodness. Because this is a type of happiness that's different than the type of happiness that comes from consumption. It doesn't have these huge flashy explosions. It starts small. So we learn to become sensitive to that. Even the pleasant feelings that come with a person's breath as they're breathing in and out. We learn to become sensitive to that. We learn to become interested in how to make that grow, how to make that shoot rise. We become people like this and we keep watering it gradually. We notice that our unwholesome qualities are going down, our wholesome qualities are going up. This is like the plant reaching a little bit high, And then finally, these kind of wholesome qualities keep going down, unwholesome qualities go down. Wholesome qualities go up, and we just keep doing the same thing. Keep trying to find more and more refined ways that our thinking is negative, how to cut that out. More and more refined ways that our thinking is positive, how to make that grow. We keep trying to make our mindfulness more and more continuous. We become fascinated with this. Same way a farmer become fascinated, wanting to know what's going on with their crops, how to make them grow. And then eventually the day comes when we start to gain a kind of success in our meditation. The day comes when we start to get pleasant feelings in our meditation that we haven't experienced before, haven't seen before. And this is like this kind of plant bearing fruit. But all these kind of steps, they start with the most basic things, knowing what kind of masks the various thoughts that come knocking on our door have. Learning about them, investigating them, knowing which ones to feed treats, and knowing which ones are going to trick us. And only letting in the ones that aren't going to trick us. But to change metaphors again, to use the garden metaphor, the benefit of this is that although it might not be the flashiest thing, actually, you probably don't hear many farmers talking about, oh yeah, my plant grew 1 inch today. The corn is 1 more inch high. I can't believe it. It's not going to make the news, right? Oh, we had, we had 1,000 year of corn harvest. Actually, I don't see any news about plant harvesting very much, News that tends to be like news about like explosions or war or whatever it is. But these kind of potentials exist all the time. Yeah? So long as we become people who water them, yeah? So long as we become people who are careful to pull out the weeds, to remove negative thoughts, yeah? So long as we keep this up and keep it growing day by day, we learn to become sensitive to the type of happiness that comes with these good qualities. Different type of happiness than the happiness of consumption. Then the day comes when that happiness completely outstrips any type of happiness that we may have had before. Completely blows it away. Any type of happiness that a person might have had from consumption. But it all starts from these things. It starts from knowing that every thought that knocks on our door tends to wear a mask, or may wear a mask. It starts from learning to try to see beneath those masks. It starts from learning which one of these thoughts to give candy to, and which ones to watch out because they're going to TP our house. And then it grows from there to a genuine happiness. And this is what's worth at the beginning of the Buddha's path. But of course, the Buddha's path goes much further, much deeper than this, depending on renunciation. But it's enough to desire to start with these things, to desire to move forward with these things, to desire to have our plant grow inch by inch, centimeter by centimeter, to become sensitive to its growth, to know when it's growing, so that one day we can have the harvest that comes from a skillful gardener, from somebody who's taking care to remove the weeds and to allow the things that are wholesome to grow. Okay? So I think I'll leave that for your reflection. Those are some thoughts for Halloween. Happy Halloween!
Thank you.